You are listening to WXRWLP Milwaukee on 104.1 FM and on riverwestradio.com everywhere. Now you can also listen by telling your smart speaker to play Riverwest Radio. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee and Troubadour Bakery, makers of artisan breads and scratch-baked goodies. Visitors to Collectivo's Bayview Cafe can look in on Troubadour Bakers as they prepare breads and cafe favorites daily. More info is at collectivocoffee.com. Welcome to Cinema Fireside. Thanks for your patience. Starting a little bit late. Something went missing, and it would be not the thing to lose. I had to book back, and luckily I found it. And in all of the people talking, all of the doings, circumstances, different locations, I'd have to say that things have been kept pretty well and have not been lost, and this thing wasn't lost either, but it just could not place where it was. So on the way, I stopped into the station, told Zav, hey man, I got to find this thing, and booked back, and sure enough found it booked over here, and that's hopefully Gabe calls in at or maybe I just hung up on the dude. If I hung up on you, Gabe, call back. I don't know if this thing was on the whole time or what. So, yeah, call back, my man. And thank you, listeners. So, yeah, again, like I say, for all of the people talking at you, all of the circumstances, all of the various locations, all of the various business meetings, requests, denials that are perpetual, everything that's valuable has been kept in place and hasn't been lost, moving here, there, and everywhere else. And tonight there was a misplacement of something, and not a misplacement, it just didn't go with me. And I thought it did, and I'm like, where is it? And started trace things back, but luckily I secured it at its original location. So we'll talk about Satan's Children from '74. It's the Halloween season. Got Ganja and Hess from '82 with Dwayne Jones, star of Night of the Living Dead. He never wanted to talk about being in that film. He was a serious actor. He wasn't interested in talking about being in something like that, even though it is American art at the time. It wasn't what it was. It's only in retrospect that it has gained what it is, but when it was first seen, I saw it in the late 70s, I knew that was art right off the bat, but Dwayne Jones did have his reasons as a serious actor not to be associated with a horror film, each to their own, most definitely. So I was in Alabama this weekend in the backwoods and doing a music video for Frontman in the Afterthoughts. I want to really thank Jeremy Ponder, Will Ponder, Drew Ponder, and Benjamin Ponder, four fine people who constitute the ranks of Frontman and the Afterthoughts, and took a direct flight, as I do, from Milwaukee to Atlanta, and got picked up and went into the Munford, Anniston, Oxford. Zav, have a great night, and thanks for letting that fly. I found what I needed to find. Yeah, that was serious business. Thank you. Zav LaPlay leaves the house, a man who runs this ship of destiny, a good man, a strong man. So anyway, so we went into the Oxford, Anniston, Munford area, and it was really good in the sense of not only the footage that was shot, the camaraderie, the professionality of those four gentlemen, but the fact that a consistent energy was maintained. There was no 4 o'clock lull and, oh man, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm tired, I just want to this, that, the other thing. It was nothing like that for 2 days, nothing but consistent, even energy, allied with really nice looking results. We went into the backwoods. There's this cabin in the backwoods we shot at. Had some uses of negative space. The fisheye. That's thanks to you, Tim Hansen. Really appreciate it. Thanks to Dan and Wright for getting me to the airport. Thanks to Tom Pankowski for getting me back. It's a whole production. And so on Saturday, after shooting the cab and getting off to a real good start, Uh, we had this kind of cave situation to film, not to go in a cave, but the side of a wall would exactly emulate a cave, except we had to really go into the backwoods. And what had happened was there's snakes in Alabama, there's poison oak in Alabama, and it's enough just to be cautious while shooting. But then, and then, we made it out. We were doing good. But then to go back into further backwoods where it was far wilder terrain and leaves everywhere where snakes could be at any second. That's when I said, "Oh man, dude, you made it this far. Oh, thank you, Sandy." Brings in Count Dracula. Thank you. And we made it this far, and I was like, "Oh man!" And then the dude in front of us, Will, is pointing out poison oak. Don't touch this. Don't go there. Don't go there. Don't go here. And I'm like, "Oh man, okay." So then we get to this crevice. We're supposed to climb up. I'm 52. I'm in good shape, but I'm like, man, if you slip, that's not going to be cool. So I said, hey, can I shoot it from this side? But they wanted it up further, up to where we needed to go. So I said, all right, I'll do it. And I'm carefully making my way up this very steep diagonal incline. Good to go. And right when I got to the top, the back of my hand brushed this 3-leaf plant. And I thought it brushed it. And the dude, Jeremy, said, nah, man, you touched it. He said, that's poison oak. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that ain't cool. So then, luckily, we had kerosene on us. And, man, I just dumped that kerosene on my hand. And then did it again, let it run into it to try to break up the oils of the poison oak. Well, we stayed steadfast. We had faith. We used the technique of diligence to stay on it. Hey, man, 48 hours later, no poison oak, man. We just beat that back with a stick, just like that. Just within seconds, kerosene on that. And it's kind of like the replay of a football play. Like, man, did he touch him or not? And you don't know, did he, didn't he? And was that poison oak touched or not? I don't know. Our man said it was. He said, no, man, your hand hit it. I don't know. But we fought hard, and came out successful. So then on Sunday, we went into Anniston. And actually Saturday night, we saw these couple musicians. Just the guitar playing in the country voice, just beautiful, immaculate, deep and resonant, just out of sight. In a lonely Anniston bar, but actually the Peerless Bar and Grill, I think the oldest saloon in Alabama. But anyway, so during a break, there was some talk, not instituted by anyone, but the person saying it, saying, yeah, when you first start out, you do things for free, but man, when you get on, man, you got to be making money. And how true is that? Because people be trying to manipulate you, take advantage of you, trying to get you to do all of this stuff for free. I'm not talking about your friends. I'm talking about just like people who all of a sudden within like 5 minutes are your best friend just to get you to do something. Oh man, you got a pickup truck on moving day, or you play guitar, stuff like that. It's like, whoa, man. And so yeah, you got to stay steadfast with that and cut those people off right at the pass, because they'll try to get you to start doing things, and then you find out later they ain't got the cash. But that later happens within like 5 seconds, and you just cut that stuff short. So take a drink of water here. Gabe, I don't know, dude, you call in, and I guess I told him 7:30. Hold on a second. All right. Sandy Weisto kicked in Dracula to watch for the holiday season. I think it's from the BBC, so we haven't seen this one. Yep, BBC for sure. And nice, with a running time of 2 hours and 40 minutes. That will be atmospheric for this Halloween season. Thank you, Sandy, for sure. Sandy's a great singer and guitarist, folk singer, folk guitarist, in a really good spirit. That's what counts, mellow, but, firm in her beliefs, but empathetic, etc., etc. A lot of accolades could be said, and some of them just were. So thanks again, Sandy, for sure. And, of course, Sarah Lou working back there, and I believe Martin Hallinger as well. Fine people who keep this project afloat for sure. So 1974's Satan's Children. The sinister 70s end. They're from 70 to 75, ends with the Patty Hearst shootout. They actually begin in August 69 with Manson. And the super 70s begin in 76 till 79, for sure, with the end of the Vietnam War, etc., etc., and all of a sudden the new rock starts, and blockbuster films begin to happen, and I was there. It just, in 1976, it seemed really sunnier. The sky seemed sunnier in America. The super 70s had for sure begun. Beer can collecting, CB radios, all of that stuff, UFOs, Bigfoot. That was all happening then. So, and happy birthday to Zav yesterday, too. So, he's a good man. We're the same age. And he's living life. I mean, he's putting a lot of effort into his work, a lot. So, Zav LaPlay, thank you so much for all that you do, for sure. Because you are at the helm of a cultural icon here, with all that you do for this River West project. So thank you so very much. So 74, what's great about these films, they're like drive-in films from the former half of the 70s, and when you were in the classroom, they'd roll in. Hold on. Thanks, man. So when you're in the classroom, they'd roll in that 16 millimeter projector and show you these scare films, whether it's drug overdose or wild living or accidents on the road, and they were in 16, and they kind of had this nightmarish color, because films would be color corrected in the theater and have a different presence. But these films had 16 millimeter, that color had this real nightmaric presence to it. And a lot of these horror films from the early 70s, or many of them, were shot in 16, or at least with that color palette that was the same as the classroom films. So when you're watching these early 70s nightmare films, it's like, wait, what's the parallel here? There's some sort of alliance with my formative years. Sure enough, same ones they rolled out on 16 millimeter in the classroom to get you to act straight, for sure. So in Satan's Children, it has this very tense domestic situation where the previous generation is coming down hard on this teenage son, and until the pressure becomes so much that he runs away into even harsher circumstances where he's brutally kidnapped and raped, and then passes out in some field, and well, it's the field of a satanic cult, so more hijinks ensue, and malevolent hijinks for that matter, and at the end he comes stumbling home in his underwear, completely caked in brown dirt, and back then there were some very, very mean, vicious, merciless parents that this generation wouldn't even begin to understand what it was like back then, just as I wouldn't begin to understand the generation before that. It just was rougher and tougher the further back you went. That's why you have all of these situations now to try to smooth things out. But again, the further back you went, the crazier these people were, the more lawless it was. And this was kind of a film of that time, what would happen when there is this bizarre generational conflict that it doesn't exist nowadays. So if you want to see those creepy, weird, early 70s drive-in terror films, these are very badly made. They're ridiculous. The acting is horrifying. It's about as horrifying as the premise itself. And whereas some of them, though, are Wellesian in nature, whereas in Orson Welles would do his own films with his own earnings, and he was quite on the advanced guard, the avant-garde, and could use very innovative techniques in editing and in photography, very destabilizing in nature, as opposed to a very conservative construct of studio filmmaking. And so some of these low-budget horror films of that era in the 70s could actually do whatever they wanted, use whatever techniques they wanted, weird fisheye lens, again, innovative editing and so forth, because there was no piper to pay. There was no studio to oversee it. Of course, they needed to get the money back to the people who had invested in it, but the drive-in was going to take whatever was given to them by these distributors. So they some of these filmmakers got to really shine in their authorship with these horror films, and that's why they are important, because it does show the human imaginative spirit to them. And there's also in the first half of the 60s, there's kind of between the premise of us being the monster in the late 60s and the very non-subtextual monster of the 50s, you know, the alien from outer space, or the alien brought to life through atomic mishaps and so forth. And in the early 60s, there was this middle ground, and some of these films are maybe British and so forth, but I call them the idea horror film. They're mostly in black and white, and they have more abstract ideas of horror, more psychological portrayals of the uncanny. And one of them is The Cabinet of Caligari. And I said, well, what was this man talking about? The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is from 1919. I didn't say The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I said The Cabinet of Caligari. It's it's semantics minus one, derived by minus one word on the people who made the film. So that would epitomize the first half of the 60s idea horror film. And there's a number of them out there, and they're kind of neat, and I do want to make a list of them. So, all right, Sandy, thanks, Tom. So we are waiting for Gabe to call in. And speaking of horror, we began Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 1818. It was read about 40 years ago, but this is a return to it 4 decades later. And just like Bram Stoker's Dracula, I believe that's 1897. These are let's just be very general and just call them Victorian era novels, Victorian and so on and so forth in the latter part of the century. But from a psychological standpoint, Frankenstein, in the sensuality of the syntax, bless your heart, Gabe, we're going to roll with you just in a few minutes. You ain't got long to wait. So, if you fell on your head, or in your 3rd grade you hear Frankenstein, Frankenstein. Well, you haven't read the novel. The novel, just like Dracula, is a work of art, a work of that Victorian general area art. It would just beautiful, insightful language. I could care less about the horror aspects of it. That means nothing. It's just the beauty of the language. So, but it's the Halloween season. If you haven't read Frankenstein or Dracula, beautiful, sensually written novels of deep portrayals of atmosphere and psychology. So, really cool stuff. Gabe, I'm going to put you on there right away, my man. Just ready, set, go. How are you, my man?
I didn't Mark, give you very well.
Okay. Crank you down a little bit. Get the level set.
Yeah.
Welcome to your world, man.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely. Yeah, it's just it's a world. Yeah, I've seen some really interesting stuff in the last couple of weeks. There's a film in particular that really stood out, and it movies of particular interest at times are these films made on these extremely limited budgets, where filmmakers are taking on a multitude of tasks, producing, shooting the films, the film or films themselves, editing, music duties, just overseeing large quantities of creative processes and production roles, and just overseeing multitudes of jobs on a small scale. But because of the the quality of the execution, or just being able to envision a quality film on a, through a script that they understand needs to be executed on a limited budget as a showcase for ideas or of narrative strength over mainstream Hollywood, or even just bankrolling through the film system, even what would be called the independent film system, is very much a corporate entity from top to bottom. It's all about money and friends and connections, and I mean, it's coming in out of nowhere with no connections or no, it just does not work like that in any business. That would be like just expecting to walk into the boardroom of a company because you went to engineering school and you said, I'm in charge. I have the next big idea. My invention is going to change the world. Even if it's true, even if you do have the next big invention, if going through a very loud means like that, or a very unthought out, unresearched means like that, it's just not going to happen. You're not even going to have that opportunity to storm the boardroom. It's a very myriad, archaic system. It's been broken down and built up, and it's changed to some degree, and it's large portions of it are now done over the internet instead of through analog means. There's a lot more speed to it in certain regards, but in the end, it's still about data, and even if we say like digital ones and zeros, it's still about text and intellectual copyright. And at the end of the day, co-producer credits are these like real flimsy, frivolous things to come by, and everyone on the set of a TV show and on the set of a film wants to get one because you get a percentage of the gross. And a lot of times you get those credits just by throwing in one idea that makes itself into the finished film that may or may not have been part of the script. So a lot of times when people talk about this producer's tinkering, or the production, the idea of the film getting away from the writer, a lot of the times it's sometimes it's the director, sometimes it's the production studio, sometimes it's the studio that's overseeing the film if it's an especially corporate film. So sometimes these films that really are made independently, they're startlingly low budget because they kind of have to be, because if they don't have financiers on their side, there's less and less resource unless you have that money yourself. So the directors of 2014's Spring, which was one of the more well-regarded films of that year, but the acting was extremely amateurish, whatever that means. The filmmaking was a little thin, and the quality of the finished product looked a little thrown together by someone in their basement. However, you've got extremely interesting lighting. You've got these great locations, and you can tell that there's an audacity that that these directors that are like writing, directing, editing, shooting, scoring, producing, they're doing, and acting, and you're still pulling off these somewhat believable practical effects, and pulling off this like fantasy horror element that is a means for which the story gets told. So Spring 2014, interesting film, like a very good student film, like a remake of a student film on a similar budget, but definitely of note and of worthy attention. And one of the films that was highlighted on that second or third tier of the best films of the year in 2014. Definitely a film that at the time I could not ignore, even though there are certainly elements of it that I thought were just a little bit unpolished. But not to worry. I love independent cinema. I love unpolished films. I love amateurish stuff, whatever that means. And it actually gave it some charm that had it been made on a big budget by a big studio, and had it been sort of forced to cut these corners, or to make sure that this element was strengthened or that element was really focused on, and that all these producers made sure that the product is going to make money, or what their idea of a profitable film is. Like these producers, the big idea producers, people that have never done a creative thing in their life, never had a creative thought in their life, and think they're creative because they just simply say they are. I'm a creative thinker. I am. I say I am. I'm a movie producer now. Why? Because I'm giving you the money, so therefore I'm producing this movie. So what I say matters. And also, I'm deciding that my ideas are interesting or my ideas matter. I know things about movies, even though I don't even watch movies. I don't even care about movies. I know what's going to make a great film. Okay. So Spring comes out 2014, definitely a film. And while I'm watching the film, I'm thinking, I can't wait to see what these guys do next. Well, they have come back. 2018's The Endless is a film that stands out among a crowd. The acting has gotten better. The filmmaking is better. The quality of hiding those limitations of budget are now better. Like, it's less apparent that we're looking at like something on the fringe of being a student film. I'm watching a film that I'm actually getting lost in because the story, the acting, the character development, the changes in tone are actually welcome. They're interesting. They're involving. They're intellectually stimulating and emotionally interesting as well. As the film goes along, it becomes more and more confident, more and more assured. It does reside on the edge of sci-fi or fantasy element. I don't want to say fantasy, science fiction elements. But the necessity of the science fiction element is so the experience of watching the narrative change through the perspective of characters. Primer from 2004 comes to mind. Low budget, high ideaed, well executed science fiction that's based on ideas and intelligence, not just gimmicks or not just things blowing up or people dying or these expensive and still ridiculously fake-looking special effects that big studio films are just drooling in through the 2000s, and to this day they always will be. So to see a film that is made for like nothing and is more interesting, is more intelligent, and is more entertaining than even though there are sequences that require special effects and they're not particularly convincing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a special effect. It's an effect necessary for the narrative device. It's like a special effect in a play. It's not going to be visual. It's not going to be photorealistic. The point is not photorealism. It's an effect for narrative purposes. For stylistic purposes, maybe secondarily. So I was impressed at watching the sort of minimalist film where all of those things, the more universal qualities of storytelling are coming first. The focus is on that stuff first. So The Endless, it is available on Netflix. Another feature and I'm sorry, I should have written down that's poor research on my part.
No, Gabe. Now it's time to honor all the great research you have done, and give the show such depth it does. Thank you for the research that you have done.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. So yeah, The Endless is one of those low budget, interesting science fiction films that's not going to appeal to people that like movies that just give them this like one-dimensional entertainment, one-dimensional type of filmmaking where it's just like, here, how much money can we throw at the screen where nothing happens? How many movie stars can we put in this? How much stupid dialogue can we cram into one film? So it's just a treat and a delight to watch a film where the surrealistic experience of being webbed into the narrative of the character's perspective is truly unsettling and entertaining and invigorating at the same time. One of the better extreme low budget films I've seen in a while. I really, really enjoyed this film a lot. Super cool stuff there. I wasn't expecting to like it this much because Spring the things I admired about the film didn't really click. I wasn't lost in that film. I was always aware I was watching a cheap-looking movie, even though there were lots of admirable features that I was watching. The Endless took notes. They took notes on what wasn't working with that film, and I love when filmmakers come back after like a several-year hiatus, and it appears to have, like, they looked at this film, they looked at their previous work and said, what didn't work? And maybe even take the courage to ask, to even talk to film critics, talk to people, what isn't working here? What aren't we aware of? What can we not see because of that, because of the less kind attributes of being an artist with an ego that's made a film from a place of passion, from our hearts. So sometimes it takes a few years to come back stronger and to make a better product. So always super cool to see interesting, intelligent filmmaker or filmmakers just increase that intelligent margin with the intelligence margin with each further work. I would say that James Gray is another filmmaker who hasn't quite made a good or great film, but there are these qualities about his films that I really like. I like the passion, and I like the dedication to this grittier aspect of almost like a 1970s or 1980s type of New York cinema. I just got done watching We Own the Night, and I watched Two Lovers as well, which I talked about last week on the show, or maybe 2 weeks ago. And neither of those films really work on their own as individual works of art. They're just too ridiculous. They're too silly. They're too reliant on movie crap. I mean, I'm obviously thinking of a different phrase in my head, but we're on the radio. So it's just like you're very aware that you're watching a movie. You're very aware that you're watching a scene that was written in a screenplay, not in a play, not something that has that very stagey but also very naturalistic element of really good stage acting, but we're watching a movie where it's obvious movie lighting, obviously, like, there's lots of music. It's all meant for effect of the viewer, especially in in a theater, in a probably, a smaller theater, an independent theater with a like-minded audience. So a movie like We Own the Night, which is a procedural cop drama where two brothers on two sides of the line, it's just such a movie sounding plot. It's just ridiculous. Joaquin Phoenix is stuck on the fence between the criminal underworld that's funding his, that's like he's somewhat involved with shady enterprise of a nightclub that he's managing in 1988. Robert Duvall happens to be his father, who's also the chief of police. Mark Wahlberg is his brother, who's just made lieutenant, who happens to be investigating the criminal enterprise that's about to be funding it. It's just so ridiculous. But with a fair amount of execution, stuff like that, these ridiculous movie plots, they can work. And they don't fully work. You don't get lost in them, but they're still, you can find treats. You can find, especially if they're well shot and they're made with enthusiasm and passion and a dedication to the resources of intelligence that you can infuse something that is that dumb from its inception, and you can prettify and flower the edges of that and make something truly entertaining and engrossing, if not necessarily terrific or great. So James Gray is definitely one of those The Yards is another film that he made in 2000. Also with Mark Wahlberg, and I believe Joaquin Phoenix was in that as well. I haven't seen that movie in 17 years, so I may be incorrect on that, but I know Wahlberg is in that. And he's just sort of refining this type of New York that I love to see. It's kind of the opposite of Woody Allen's New York. It's very common. It's very lower middle class, very hardworking immigrant, where the type of witty conversation is more about, it has more in common with Seinfeld than it does with Woody Allen or Nora Ephron or Rob Reiner, where it's like, it's the lack of this really witty repartee almost makes it more intelligent because it's more relatable. But he hasn't quite made a masterpiece yet, but I eagerly await James Gray's new films. Always when they come out, I always look forward to seeing them. So super cool stuff there, just for like those types of dramas that used to come out of Warner Brothers or Columbia Pictures, just these mid-level, small to medium budgeted films, usually with one major actor like Kevin Costner or Robin Wright or actors of that type. These very standard mainstream types of dramas that dealt with more mature, complex adult situations. You just don't see those types of films being made by larger studios anymore. Independent films are still, smaller films are all around the world are making all types of films like that, but oftentimes they're being sidelined to film festivals or to the award season, or they're not even being released in the States as often, or if they are, they're going right to the streaming services, because there just isn't as much of a theatrical market for them as there used to be.
Wow,
But
thank you.
Yeah. The Quincy documentary on Netflix is as good as any of the absolutely outstanding documentaries about pop culture figures that Netflix makes. They release dozens of these a year. And it just is almost annoying how good they are, how necessary they are, how interesting they actually are, because I feel like if I would watch 10 minutes of a film like this, and it's not worth my time, it's not going to teach me anything, it's not going to have any artistic virtue, it's not worth my time, it's not worth your time, I can get caught up with a film made in 1973 that's on a list. Unfortunately, and I mean this in the best possible way, the movie is totally, totally awesome and totally necessary. And when I say necessary, I just mean that it's worth, every minute of the film is worth watching. Quincy Jones is undoubtedly probably one of the most, if not the most, key figure to pop music of the last 50 years. Everything about Frank Sinatra's sound and production and the type of eloquence that we now know and associate with Frank Sinatra, most of that comes from the way that Quincy Jones arranged and composed much of his comeback in the mid to late 1950s. About 70 to 80% of that is all Quincy Jones. I didn't know that. So that was stunning to realize, and to see the connections between him and other musicians and acts, and his own music that he had made throughout the year. Throughout the years. It's just it's a stunning career, and it's actually edited in a very interesting way where it cuts back and forth between. It doesn't just go in a timeline from past to present. It always has the stake of contemporary events that Rashida Jones, his daughter, has been filming for about 4 or 5 years since he started having more considerable health problems. And going even the more, I would say, more standard biographical sketch portions of the film are just really well done. So if that sounds like something of interest, music history, and not just music history, but major, big, blockbuster, good music history that's well made, Quincy is actually a pretty good documentary. I'll probably, at the end of the year, though, there's just so many of these that HBO and Netflix and PBS and the BBC, et cetera, produce that they just sort of fade. And if I read about it or if I come across it, it's, oh, yeah, that's right. But it's not something, these films rarely stand alone as huge, as crowning works of art, because they follow a formula. And it's a good formula, so there's nothing wrong with that. Three Identical Strangers, which is one of the more touted documentaries of the year, directed by produced and directed through CNN Films, shot in the standard and excellent style of CNN Films. They really have crafted a production mold for themselves that is very watchable, very engrossing, very entertaining, and very informative, and just very good. With each film that they put out, they get better. In some ways, you could say that it's a single entity, like these films are kind of indivisible from each other because of but the quality of each of them is so good because of the consistency of those high standards of production that they refuse to lower. So even though there are these markers of consistency, they're good markers. And I would rather have those consistencies in them than not, because they ensure that you have a strong narrative product. You have a cohesive product, that you have a product that's digestible. And like I said, I said this with RBG, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary. If it takes almost no risks or stance on the director's actual opinion about the filmmaker, about the subject, which is the one major expense I would say about these CNN film documentaries, is the fact that they are a little procedural. They are a little bereft of individual voice. They're more like works of reporting than they are works of commentary, or lacking any sort of editorial voice or unique perspective. But I guess it is at that expense, and it is at that expense that Three Identical Strangers does not rise as one of the better documentaries of the year, in my opinion, even though it's been touted as such almost universally. Visually, it's unforgettable. There are images, there are moments that are stunning, that are beautiful, that are breathtaking, flawlessly executed, I would say at times even.
As we wrap up tonight's show, Gabe, what are you thinking about for your Halloween cinematic treats?
Ooh, well, Mark,
you've got 2 minutes.
I would say I'm always trying to get caught up on the great horror films that have ever been made. And, there's a list that I have that I just sort of randomly check away at. And there just aren't that many entries anymore that need to be attacked or that need to be run down. Maybe a handful of minor Dario Argento films, one or two Fulci films, stuff like that. But I feel like I've seen all of the major works of horror. I had a master list that I compiled when I was in 7th grade, and I had another list that I compiled when I was 20. And I've checked off all but 4 films, I think, on both lists.
Wow, well, congratulations, Gabe. That's masterful.
But there's always more. There's always more, Mark.
Okay, of course there is.
And I always appreciate when you shine a light on the reverence for the great masterworks of horror. It's like almost like horror is the base for it to exist, but what's underlying, what's there as its text is so much more interesting than it just being a horror film. Like the horror just happens to be there, like Rosemary's Baby, both the book and the film, Dracula, Frankenstein. I'm so glad you brought those up, Mark, because I couldn't have agreed more with your take on both of those books.
Yeah,
and those films to many degrees,
Yeah, absolutely. They're all wonderful, and they are ready for the Halloween season. Well, Gabe, this is that point in the show where I want to profusely thank you for all the goodness that you bring in intellectuality as well as spirit, and also, my memory is fading, so let me leave it at that sentence. I don't know what the second half of that sentence was going to be. So, bless your heart, Gabe, and I offer you a very good night. And
thank you, Mark.
And blessings.
Wow, this was just a half an hour, cut right to it, get in, get out. Wow, I feel energized instead of exhausted right now. This is a new thing.
It is a new thing. Enjoy it. Yet sleep well tonight.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you to our listeners. We'll see you all real soon. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Gabe, and thank you, listeners, for listening in. If you are listening live, it is a beautiful autumnal evening in Milwaukee, and the colors are changing into their fall-like fury, robust in their, monochromatic, because they're actually, you can go from red to yellow, and so on and so forth. So it's not just particular shades, but a variety of colors, and it's beautiful up here. Well, it will be beautiful up here in Wisconsin. I think it's a little bit late that the leaves are turning, but that's good because there's lots of filming to be done, and we need the time to do it for sure. And if you, on these beautiful autumnal evenings, there's radio dramas such as Suspense, Mysterious Traveler, Inner Sanctum, Lights Out, The Witch's Tale, Weird Circle, Escape, uh, Nightfall, Midnight, The Vanishing Point, and just what a way to fall asleep in the evening to radio dramas. Leave the window open, let that autumnal air come on in. It will be beautiful. And then read a great some horror book before going to sleep as well. I mean, this is the time to do it. You only have like about approximately 3 weeks or so to do that, and so now definitely is the time. It is the haunting season, and I hope that everybody's well. I hope everyone's pursuing their dreams, following their visions, and just taking the time out when you wake up in the morning, realizing it is one life to live, and you are actually living it. Don't let no one get you down. Life can be challenging, but be tough and rise to your greater dreams, because once it's over, man, it's over. Just like this show. We will be on at the same time next week on WXRWLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.